This is GunLord, a game from indie game studio NG Dev. Released in 2012, it's their take on the Turrican formula, and if you don't know Turrican, it's a take on the Metroid formula, but with quite a different feel. I'd say it's more of a run and gun than Metroid was, though it keeps much of the exploration intact, as well stealing some ideas like the Morph Ball, and check out the artwork on this manual. NG Dev really went all out when they made this, and it shows. But that's enough of the box and packaging and stuff. Let's pop the game in and see if that care extends to the gameplay. Yep, that's Turrican alright, and the gorgeous art style from the manual does extend into the game. It looks beautiful. Everything is presented in actual low-res graphics, so that means if you have a CRT, you will get scan lines. So as you can see, it's a Turrican clone. And if you are unfamiliar with Turrican, or God forbid, unfamiliar with Metroid, GunLord is a action platformer where you jump around, shoot stuff, and explore. Just like it says on the box, it says jump, shoot, explore, and that's exactly what you are going to do in GunLord. Fortunately, there are some power-ups to aid you. Like in Turrican, you have a spread shot, a concentrated shot that you see here, and a bouncing shot, among others. But also like Turrican, there are some side weapons. And these are all lifted straight out of Turrican. You have a ball you can curl up into to become invincible, kind of like the Morph Ball, and that allows you to drop bombs as well. Now, you don't have great control when you're in ball form, but that's the trade-off. You have a side flash bomb to help you in kind of sticky situations. And finally, you have an energy beam that you can aim at any angle. In this game, however, unlike Turrican, it's mapped to its own button, which means there's no pause necessary to activate it. And as long as we're comparing this to Turrican, I think the camera is much improved compared to the Turrican games. While in Turrican you would play close to the edge of the screen as it scrolled because of the scroll box, GunLord pulls the camera back when you change directions so that less of the screen space is behind the player. You know, think of Defender when you change directions in that. This makes a huge difference in how the player approaches the game. Since the viewing distance was so often limited in Turrican, you tended to have to play defensively, inching along. GunLord, on the other hand, lets you run through levels with guns blazing, though treading carefully, of course, pays off as well. GunLord's design seems like an answer to the question, if there were a new Turrican game, what would it be like? Though it takes more than its share of inspiration from that series, it also takes it into some new directions as well, and it really feels like a proper Turrican sequel. It's quite an achievement, in my opinion, to really nail that feel, and improve upon it in some ways as well. I think that GunLord blends the best of the original Turricans with improvements which came with later entries in the series. For example, you can take 3 individual hits instead of the power drain from the first games. See, in the first Turrican games, getting hit meant that your energy would drain away. There was no invincibility period. You just had to get out of that situation as fast as possible to minimize the damage that you took. It was pretty similar in this way to Thexter. However, many people found this to be confusing or even downright unfinished feeling, so it was changed in later entries. So, those of you who didn't like the energy drain system in the older games will be happy to know that it uses these individual distinct hits instead. So in that way, it's a lot more like the console versions of Turrican. But unlike the consoleized versions of Turrican, you know, Mega Turricans, the Super Turrican series, there is a lot of exploration here. In this area, it shares more in common with the Commodore 64 and Amiga originals. The levels are vast, and I'm always finding something new. While some of the secrets entail standing on the power-up chests to reach higher places, you know, instead of destroying them, there are plenty of nooks and crannies, hidden rooms, and other secrets. The music in GunLord is fantastic, and it's every bit as good as the style of music it's trying to copy from the original Turrican games, which is, again, quite an achievement. It's top-notch stuff. The bosses in GunLord are enormous, and they fill the screen. They tend to be well patterned and are, generally speaking, a joy to fight. However, there is an unfortunate difficulty spike on the Stage 3 mid-boss, which manages to be harder than later end-of-stage bosses. So much so, in fact, that it very nearly ruined the game for me. So if you get stuck like I did, you can refer back to this footage to see how you defeat this boss. See, when he goes downward here, you jump on the rightmost platform, and he'll get closer with that flame shot. Don't forget to wipe away the bullets he shoots with your beam. Now, you have to jump to the left side before he gets too close, because he'll flambe you otherwise. And I'd recommend the spread shot, because it'll get a lot of those little orb things it shoots before they become a problem. And that's pretty much all there is to it. See? Easy as cake. But yeah, in general the bosses in this game are pretty freaking rad, and they really show off the sprite work. And speaking of sprite work, I believe there was even some cameo art contributed by the legendary Hank Nyborg, who is known for his work on classic games like Flink. Now if you don't know Flink, it's worth a play for the pixel art alone. I'm really not sure how much work he did on this particular game, but damn if it doesn't look really good. The second stage in GunLord is a forced scrolling shooter area, and it takes a lot of inspiration from the Thunder Force games. While it won't blow away shmup aficionados, it is quite well done. It's also easygoing enough as to not stump players who don't play many shmups, which is fitting given that the game is primarily a platformer. As much as I like GunLord, I do of course have a few complaints. My biggest is that power-ups are very hard to identify. A lot of times I have no idea what weapon I'm picking up until the announcer tells me. The intro is also impossibly goofy, which really doesn't suit a game of this caliber. It's much too self-aware for a game like this. And finally, there's really not much in the way of options. I really wish the game had a difficulty setting, because the game is pretty challenging, but, a hard mode would be very welcome. However, if that would mean sacrificing the game's balance, then they really did make the right choice. Everything in GunLord feels very professional, and it's a shame it didn't come out on more systems. There is, in addition to this Dreamcast release, a couple releases, one for I believe the Neo Geo AES and the Neo Geo CD, though the Neo Geo cartridge version is very expensive. I believe it's in the realm of $500. Yeah. So, that's GunLord. Although it's a tribute that sticks close to the source material, it's arguably more polished than its inspiration and highly recommended.